And now, it's time for the Yacht Club Show with Killer, Rev D, and Dr. Jim.
Well, welcome back, listeners. This is our follow-up to our assessment of Trump's, I guess at the time it might have been 80 or 90 days, I'm not sure. Now we're, 120 days. We're going to have some updates on our thoughts there. But, well, first of all, this is Killer, and I'm joined in the studio by Rev D.
Well, he just kind of gave us short shrift there.
Yeah,
Did you notice that?
yeah,
It's the Killer Show, and we're just kind of...
We're the Pips.
Yeah.
And I'm joined by Rev D and, of course, Dr. Jim, the illustrious. Is that the right word?
Ubiquitous.
Inestimable.
Cool.
But speaking of Dr. Jim, boy, he held court last time, didn't he? When the softball team got together. We have this core group of softball players that we get together once a month, and we get into some spirited discussions, and Jim was holding court, man. He was impressing us with his knowledge of...
Well, Dr. Jim was in his element.
He's talking about immigration and trade, and boy, his knowledge of Canada was just amazing. He was naming all the provinces at one point, taking us through the provinces and their
political leanings. Yeah, that was it.
It was impressive.
It very was. Now, we don't know if anybody was right.
Well,
but it sounded good. But it did sound good, didn't it?
I can't be held accountable for what you guys believe.
Oh, okay. See, I thought it kind of reminded me of the original moniker we gave Dr. Jim, the smartest man in the world.
Just
and it
ask
reminded
him?
me.
Yeah, just ask him. Yeah.
So I thought, my gosh, we got to get Jim in the studio again here and pick his brain.
You know what? It was those 2 nitro porters. Just fueled the frontal cortex. Woo! There's one for you.
You know, a drink never hurt nobody at all. You just remember the great words of Mr. Joey Lewis. He says, "You're not drunk if you can lay on the floor without holding on."
This is kind of funny, too. I got here before you, Rev D, into the studio, and Jim was here, and, of course, he owns it. And I said, boy, big week for Trump, huh? And Jim said, in what context? I thought, wow, what did I miss?
Well, he was still studying the Canadian provinces. He was still.
I can't remember if Nova Scotia is a part of Quebec or. Anyway, go ahead.
Oh, maybe. Well, yeah, see, he doesn't know.
I don't.
Province he's a little fuzzy.
There's some gaps in.
Well, the Eastern. He was really espousing
the Western. The Western.
He was really the big.
The
Western.
He's very up on Western.
Western.
Yeah.
Because those guys might say, "All right, we're going to the United States."
They might secede. Yeah. So a lot has been going on. Well, we have a new pope.
Yes.
And I don't know if Trump's taking credit for that or not. American Pope, maybe Trump's taking credit for that.
He probably hasn't thought of doing it yet.
I think, wasn't he circulating a picture so people could kind of try the concept on a couple of weeks ago?
Yeah.
But Pope Leo the 14th?
14th, yeah.
American Pope. It kind of got me thinking about reevaluating values, priorities. And the whole immigration thing kind of came to the forefront of my thinking. Thought maybe we could use that as the main topic of today's show, having witnessed this transition to Pope Leo, who's pretty much carrying the same message that Pope Francis did, from what I gather, about taking care of the poor. That's one of our main responsibilities. And I think he had some recent texts where he's a little bit more critical of our immigration policy. So I just want to share, my thoughts, and then so I just want to see what you guys think. So I watched the the Pope selection is from the moment that they announced that the white smoke came out, I watched, right? I was watching live, and the pageantry was almost overwhelming. It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean,
nobody has anything on the Catholics as far as pageantry.
oh my
You know,
gosh.
the Swiss
musicians,
guards and the
guard-
whole,
yeah, the
you know,
guards,
you're not going to beat the Catholics for pageantry.
You can't. I fully expected the church was going to take a step backwards. And when I say backwards, you know, Rite of Benedict, okay? I thought maybe the general thought was among hardline Catholics that Francis took things too much to the left or to the liberal cause too much, where you can start to have discussions about practicality and what's really doable. You know, so there was an hour of anticipation because no one knew who was selected. And back in my mind, I was thinking it was probably that African Pope that's been very conservative. And then when Pope Leo came out, or Robert Prevost, when he came out, it was kind of a moment of great awe, and it was very emotional, I think, for a lot of people. And then when he spoke in both Latin and Spanish, and didn't use the English language at all to the throngs, he's an American, but he's also a Pope for the world. And then you start reading about his background and his take on what our values should be, and as followers of Christ, how we should behave. And I started thinking about our immigration policy and some of the hard lines we're taking, and got me thinking, is there a better way?
Well, okay, let me ask you this. What would the better way be? What should be different?
Let me start by saying this. I don't think you'll ever see a picture of Tom Holman next to the word Christianity.
Okay.
Oh,
Right?
okay. You're judging. You're judging.
Okay, fair. It's kind of like there's no exceptions. You can't have a sanctuary city. If you're in here, this country illegally, we're going to find you. You know, these are his words.
Okay.
And I got to believe when we recorded right after the election, it was just Dave and me that time, and I expressed concern about the immigration policy that was going to be too extreme. My thought was, let's go after the criminal element, and I mean people that are breaking severe laws, and sure, let's deport them. You can't come into this country and start doing gang-related stuff and murder and rape. That's just uncalled for. You get sent back. But it's the people on the margins, the people that not forced out of their countries. I'm sure they elected to come here, but made the treks, endured all the hardships for a better life. And I think some of them, for various reasons, technicalities, whatever, are getting deported as part of this mass deportment. And I just think you go after criminal element, and then you have to very carefully, maybe with the scalpel, go after the rest. But that's kind of where I'm at right now.
So let's start with as big a picture as you can get.
Okay.
There are 10 billion people in the world. Now, they officially say there's 8 billion, but I read somewhere that the...
Dr. Jim knows better.
Yeah.
Well,
You don't question him anymore.
Nothing I
meeting.
ever say is like invented in my mind. I read it somewhere. It may not be...
Well, they probably weren't counting the people in Western Canada.
Well, they weren't. They were. Now, here's the situation, though. So individuals who do this for a living say that we are undercounting the rural population in most of the world. So I'm just going to round everything up to 10 billion.
Fair enough.
All right, you want to call it 8? Let's call it 8 billion.
Let's call it 8 billion, call it even.
I'll call it. That's kind of the official number. We'll call it 8 billion.
I read somewhere it's like 7.9, but we'll get
Okay. All right. Thank you. You've got me down. We've negotiated from 10 to 8, and now if you really, it just becomes annoying to say 7.9.
Killers are at the art of the deal.
So let's say now, what percentage of those people, that 8 billion people, do you think would qualify as poor, indigenous, in desperate straits? would
What
it be?
percentage?
Yeah,
I'm going to go with the old 20% rule.
20%.
Yeah.
So you think 80% of the world is fat, dumb, and happy, man? I got 2 TVs. I got
Oh,
a
I'm
car.
not saying fat, dumb, and happy, but
What-
live
what-
above poverty level.
Living above
All right,
poverty.
let me really think this. Let me rethink this. 40%.
Let's-
That's as high as I'm going to go.
Okay, I'm going to claim priority because I'm the one with the mic. I'm going to go with 50%.
Okay. I'm not gonna
Again,
I'm
we're
not gonna
getting
argue with you 'cause
we're
I
getting
don't
into
know.
decimals. If you say 40, let's see, 8 fours are 32, 3.2 billion. I'm going with 50%. Call it 4 billion.
Okay.
Okay, how many of those should come into the country?
As many as we can support without impacting our standard of living.
So let's say this country is a population of say 350 million. So would you say 350 an additional 350 million? I mean, what's the number? Give me a number, ballpark number.
Let's see. We're 350 million. I'd say we can
Take 20% of that. 10%.
So we can add another 10%. To
So
it.
you want to add 35 million? 35 million out of 4 billion people.
Yes, that's
so that
about
means
all we can
somebody
do.
is going to show up at the border, and we're going to say no. Is that correct?
Yeah, you'll have to.
In
say
fact,
our doors are
we're going to
closed.
say, let's see, 35 million out of 4 billion. So
Rick.
4 billion.
We're losing you, Jim.
4 billion is 4,000 million, and we're talking about 35. Let's say we're going to take in 40 because I want to stay away from the decimal place.
Thank
So
you,
we're
Jim.
going to take in
I can
40.
do the math more easily. In my
Me
mind.
too. So we're going to take in 40 million people.
40 million people.
40 million people
Over.
out of 4,000 million people. So that's 10 out of
Yeah, 4,000 million.
10 out of 1,000 people will come into the country.
Okay.
You okay with? But
Yeah, I'm just saying that's all we can.
but
we can-
well, why? Why? So we have to turn. We have to tell 9,960 million people. No.
Are they knocking on our door?
Yeah, they all want to come.
Well, they all want to come, but are they at the border? Are they
Oh, I
getting to the border?
see. Well,
So if
maybe
they
they
get through Mexico,
So
they
that
should come?
so you got some criteria. They got if they can swim through the shark-infested waters, we'll take them in.
If they're no, I'm not saying we'll take them. We'll take them up to the point where we can no longer afford to.
Then what do you do with the rest?
You turn them away.
Turn them away. So it's okay to turn them away.
Well, you send a message out to the world. This is our policy.
Oh, it's
We're
a mo-
only going to accept.
This is your marketing plan.
Yeah. Now you got to market this a little bit. We're only going to accept.
open for business.
Yeah, we're open for business. Once we hit the 10 million mark,
You're out of luck.
you're out. So you might want to, you might want to watch the numbers
Okay.
before you make the dangerous trek here. Because
Okay.
if we're at 9,900,000, you might want to stay home.
Is that per year or is that one time?
No, that's to maintain. It's to maintain the 300 and how would you say we're at 300 million?
We're at 350.
So that's to maintain the 390,000 population. So it's going to ebb and flow each year too.
Right. Okay. But ebb and flow in turn. Well, are we going to take the 40 million in all at once or
No.
what?
Well, we could, but then that shuts the door for a while.
Well, if we don't take them in, those other, how many a year do we want to take in? 4?
I guess the question is, how many people have come in illegally under Biden in 4 years?
Well, I've
Do we
heard.
know? Let me
I
look
don't
that up.
know.
It's
Let me
like
pause
2
it.
million or something.
I thought it was
Some of them-
Let me
11
pause
million.
it. So we looked up the numbers. It's been 10 million immigrants, legal and illegal, under the Biden administration's 4 years. So a little over 2 million a year.
All right.
So we figured 35 million we could absorb. There's going to be attrition, low birth rates. I think we could easily maintain 2 million, 3 million a year for a while. So for 17 years anyway, we'll be able to maintain this, and then we'll reevaluate.
Yeah, you're also assuming none of these people are reproducing once they get into the States.
That's a good point, too.
So
That's a good point.
The whole idea of letting them in is not attrition, you ignore attrition because they're supposed to be a net positive in terms of the population. So my point is I don't want to get bogged down on whether or not it's a good idea to let poor people into the country who need help. My point is we cannot let every poor person outside of the United States into the United States. So we have to tell 99% of all the poor people in the world, no, you cannot come in.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, we're one country. I know we're a big country, but you just can't accept all the world's poor. That would just crush this country.
And what constitutes, to your point, what constitutes what we can handle? Because there's a question of what we can handle today. Can we handle any? Is it just need to more and more disruption and turmoil?
I see this website, globally available website, and it's got a counter. And you can see how many immigrants we can accept this year, and the counter will just keep flipping, right? And it's going to be adjusted every year, and the world can see it, and it's like, all right, I'm poor, I live in Uganda, I'm going to hop on a homemade raft and cross the ocean, and
right, because
I know that the U.S. hasn't reached its immigration quota.
Right.
But if it's 1,990,000, you don't get on that raft. You don't take the risk. All I'm saying is the U.S. has got to be open to the world about how much you can accept on a given year and just adjust accordingly. And it's got to be a known quantity to the entire world. I don't know. I know it sounds a little crazy.
No, I think that sounds fair, and I think there should be a criteria of your qualifications to come in. But I think you're on the right. I don't disagree with what you're saying.
Okay. But yeah, and to Jim's point, we can't accept everybody. That's suicide. It'd be a suicide to this nation. We'll become what they're trying to leave at some point.
Well, that's the point, too. They're going to come here with a set of customs and traditions and expectations that they bring from a country that's dysfunctional.
But they're going to overwhelm our schools, our electrical grid, our
the medical system,
farming output, everything. Yeah, it's just we could end up becoming what they're trying to get away from.
That's the argument, whether you buy it or not, Trump makes. Taking all these immigrants is threatening the integrity of the nation. That's his argument. Now, whether you buy that or not, a lot of people don't. And I think it's, again, is there a criteria to measure these two arguments? Right. I'm giving you a hard time in terms of just looking at the scope of the problem and trying to figure out how to have an immigration policy that's good for the United States. Because that's the obligation of the United States government, is to have an immigration policy that is good for the citizens of the United States. It's not our place to determine the morality of immigration. Our place is to see what is good for the United States. And when we were taken, you're tired, you're hungry and poor, yearning to be free, we needed the citizens to clean the streets, build the highways, everything else.
Be productive citizens.
Be productive citizens. And there was no incremental cost to people. These people came and they succeeded or they died.
Yeah.
And there was no one there to back them up except maybe the churches were probably the last refuge for people like this. The churches and their own
family. If you had family or your community,
their own, I guess we call them ghettos now, or neighborhoods, where you go to an Italian neighborhood, a German neighborhood, an Irish neighborhood. All those people supported the immigrants that came to this country and the various religious organizations that that were willing to help him out. It was imperfect. The lack of support for these people led to probably the creation of most of the gangs we've ever encountered in our history in this country, and it's probably a natural result. I mean, if you're starving,
Yep.
stealing money is okay.
Yeah.
And the other, everybody wants to belong.
That's
something.
true.
That's a human need.
And that's the other side of this. What happens to whatever this thing that means to you to be American, that you belong to? And for the longest time, I used to watch when I was growing up the North being so critical of the South in the 50s and 60s, because the South was just a pack of racists, and they were lynching black people once every week. There was a lynching to appease the crowd or something like that, and everything up north is great, man. We were wonderful people. And then Boston decided to bus kids from one neighborhood to another, and all hell broke loose.
Yeah.
So their reaction to it is going to be like it was in Boston. People, they have an identity that you have to take into consideration. How are they going to feel about it? So, again, this is the other knock that comes across for liberal policies. It's nice for the elite crowd when they go off to Martha's Vineyard and listen to the right people, but then they go back home to their Fifth Avenue mansion, and they don't have to deal with the consequences of all the decisions that they're supporting. So I guess maybe I compartmentalize this by saying the poor are a reality. And
even Christ said you always have the poor.
Right. They're a reality, and you cannot ignore it. And the question is, what can you do about it? And can you do about it here, or can you do about it in their own country?
I think you do what you can. That's my point. It's like you come up with a number. This is how many people can absorb in 2026. Here's the counter for everyone to see, and once it hits that total, the border's shut down.
Okay, and we determine who can come in. I mean, there's got to be some kind of an order to it. You apply to come in.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
And this is where I disagree with Trump. I think the people that are suffering the greatest maybe should be at the top of the list. That's just but that's from a Christian point of view.
Well, and then isn't that kind of subjective? Who's suffering the most?
I mean,
I don't know
if they're, let's say they're suffering from religious persecution, political persecution, I don't know. Is that subjective? Depending on what country, it might be pretty straightforward.
Who's going to make that determination? Number one. Number two, if you don't take in this soon-to-be obsolete software engineer, maybe that software engineer will increase our wealth to the point that we can take up 3 people for one software engineer. So it's not as objective as you're saying. In other words, you're not going to take in the software engineer, even though he's being threatened and persecuted in his country. You're going to take in the poor person who is...
Yeah, because if he's a software engineer in another country, he's probably not destitute,
Oh, okay.
So
that's fine.
That's a prioritization, but it's more from a Christian perspective.
So the poor are better than the educated.
The poor would be my priority.
Okay.
But that's just.
Right.
But that's just my moral.
Okay, and that's your moral compass.
Yep.
And how do you pay for it?
Right.
What do we do?
Right.
That's
factors in that number that we come up with.
That's the discussion that has to be had.
Right.
And I don't know about you guys, but I don't think we're going to have that discussion any other than here.
No,
I don't think we're going to have that discussion.
I don't know if who's even capable of having that discussion. We're talking about a principle of letting poor people into the country versus sitting across the table one-on-one with an individual and determining if they're the right kind of person to meet our criteria.
That's where I think the Pope is right to do more for the poor, but there's a whole other discussion that has to take place with that they just, it gets oversimplified by saying we have to do more for the poor. Okay, what does that mean?
Agree.
Okay, that's where it's tough. So it's easy to sit up there,
Pontificate.
Yeah,
Yeah, when you don't have to. You don't have to.
How you like that?
yeah, I like it.
When you don't have to actually make the decision. And
Right.
by the way, I think it would be totally inappropriate for me to tell the Pope how to think about this, or tell any religious person who thinks they're following Christ's directive to take care of the poor. That's exactly what they signed up for. They are the ones who advocate and at least bring these policies for discussion. But they're not qualified they don't have a solution. They don't even try to propose a solution. And it's kind of astounding with the number of universities that are under the direct interface with the Vatican and the Catholic Church, that they haven't got some brain trust who can say, okay, here is the we need a Catholic AI.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great idea. We were always looking for projects to do in college. You got to think that there's some Jesuit college somewhere that could
Come up with
an
equitable immigration.
or just an idea, get the
standard.
discussion started.
I'm understanding your sympathy for the poor and the desire to put our actions with our claimed principles. But now you're starting to sound like a progressive there, Mike. I don't know what to do.
Commie, huh?
Commie.
Comrade Mike.
Comrade Mike.
Comrade Mike.
Comrade Killer. That has a better ring to it.
No, I think it's it's an emotional issue, an appealing issue to people, and I think Trump policies are an easy target.
No, it's an emotional issue.
Yeah.
And then it's an issue you got to take the emotion out of.
Right. You are going to turn people away.
Yes.
So turning people away there's nothing immoral about that.
Well, it's not immoral because you can't be all things to all people. If you want your country to start collapsing under its own weight, bring everybody in. But at some point, you've got to preserve your country.
Yeah, you have to have a culture.
You had to have a culture.
Yes. And isn't that what they're going through in Europe right now? In the UK, the problems that they're having right now?
I think so.
What would he?
Well, Steimer said, they're having to close their borders all of a sudden.
Right.
He said, we're an island of strangers now. We have no culture.
Right.
Right.
England.
Right.
Yeah. That's what happens.
Yes.
I don't know if I don't think that's good.
See, one of the biggest issues that I think most the people have with, say, progressive policies is that we fail to recognize it's a zero-sum game. For every opportunity you give this person, you do not give this person, or you take it away from this person. So everybody says it's okay to give this person the opportunity because I'm never going to have to give him my opportunity. The guy whose kid goes to Brown is not going to lose his job. The kid is not going to lose his job because some immigrant takes it, but the guy who works as a cab driver, his kid won't get a job because some immigrant got that job. And that's the people who want to advocate these things don't have to pay the consequences, the real world consequences. And then, as you're talking about with the English, if you tear apart the definition of what it means to be English, it's just like
that's kind of what's happened. I've always felt like if you immigrate to a country, you've got to adapt to their culture.
Right.
That doesn't happen. So
right.
Anyway,
but it should happen.
It should happen.
It should happen.
Yeah.
So someone immigrates if you're Muslim and you immigrate to this country, and you do not somehow mold yourself to the American culture, you learn English, and you don't have to give up your religion or anything else like that. But the question is, there are consequences to it, and it's you have set yourself apart, and now you're you are calling me racist because I don't compromise my culture or my right to hire whoever I want. I'm a racist for doing that. So suddenly my rights are subordinate to someone else's rights. Again, it's a zero-sum game. And you can't, the minute you start saying this one has more rights than this one, then who's the victim of discrimination?
Sure. No, I get it. No easy answers.
I mean, it's easy to find out actual examples of discrimination that all of us would sit around and say, yes, that is unfair. But there are these other examples that are called discrimination but are just cultural. The culture is immunizing itself against being killed.
You know, what just struck me when you were saying that, Jim, what's easy to say is that Trump's immigration policies are bad.
Mm-hmm.
That's easy to say.
It is.
But to have that further discussion is very difficult.
Right. The problem I have with what Trump is doing is that it almost gets back. He's almost violating our culture to begin with, because this is our big claim to fame is that we're a nation of laws. And if he's not going to at least go through the processes that the law expects him to go through, then he could be accused of subverting our culture.
Fair.
So never mind what the net result would be from the immigrant coming into the country.
Agree. These are dicey times.
Right.
Well, I think...
we beat the hell out of this.
Yeah, we beat the hell out of that. We didn't really get into the rest of Trump's 120 days, but I'm glad you guys humored me on this, and because it's just something it's been on my mind I want to talk about, and with the new pope and...
Well, Killer, I'm going to tell you,
obligations.
It's good there's people like you, because that makes people like me rethink things. See where I'm, if I should be changing my outlook on things, and I think that's good. I think the discussion is good. I do.
Then you got Heartless Jim over there.
Yeah, I feel like you. I let you down, Mike. I didn't have the definitive, well thought out black and white answer for the problem.
Well, Jim, I got
and have you saying to yourself,
this would be a first where Jim doesn't have the solution.
No, Jim. You know what you should come up with? Send him to Saskatchewan.
Saskatchewan.
You know what? If we bought Canada, a lot of immigrants could probably find a little
bit in Manitoba.
Oil fields.
We don't buy them. We just annex them. we just announce it.
So maybe that's part of Trump's plan. Let's get Greenland and Canada.
I was just going to say Greenland is a big body of land there that has room.
He just said change Gulf of Mexico to Gulf of America. Just say, hey, Canada, 51st state.
Anyway,
we got to wrap up here. Any closing words of wisdom? I got a couple quotes from Elon Musk. If you care about the reality of goodness instead of the perception of it, philanthropy is extremely difficult. Thought that was pretty good. Where's another one? Elon Musk. Being a mom is just as important as any career. Couple quotes from Elon Musk, who's been taking a lot of heat lately.
I got one. I saw this on a T-shirt the other day, which just gave me a chuckle. Due to budget cuts, the light at the end of the tunnel has been canceled.
All right, guys. Catch you next time.
Okay, Mikey.